The leaders of Ukraine and NATO are all lashing out at Russia for what Poland calls an act of aggression. The Polish prime minister says more than a dozen Russian drones were shot down entering Poland's airspace overnight. The drones crossed into Poland during a massive attack on targets in Ukraine along the border. It's the first ever airspace violation for a member of NATO. Secretary General Mark Rutte said that all are ready to respond.
Whether it was intentionally or not, it is absolutely reckless. It is absolutely dangerous. But as I said, the full assessment is ongoing. And to Putin, I mean, my message is clear. Stop the war in Ukraine. Stop the escalating war, which he is now basically mounting on innocent civilians and civilian infrastructure. Stop violating allied airspace. And know that we stand ready. That we are vigilant and that we will defend every inch of NATO territory.
CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio is in London. He is monitoring the situation for us and joins us at this hour. All right, Ramy, just break down the latest information that you're getting at this moment.
Yeah, Vlad. Well, first off, Poland's prime minister is mincing no words. Donald Tusk saying that his country is now at its closest to open conflict ever since World War II. And reminder, NATO was established back in 1949, and he says this is a clear provocation. Poland is now assessing the damage to homes and property. You can see some of the aftermath video there, potentially the remains of one of those drones. Poland's Interior Ministry says that it found at least 7 drones, the remains of one unidentified object as well. Most were in eastern Poland, of course, bordering Ukraine slightly to the south and Belarus slightly to the north, which, remember, that country is a Russian ally. But 2 other drones, those were found in central Poland and southern Poland, Vlad. And that is farther from the borders. Flight tracking website Flight Radar also showed passenger planes avoiding the capital's airspace that you can see on your screen there. But at the same time, Flight Radar also notched 2 military planes. One was a NATO refueling tanker. Another was a Polish early warning aircraft that did take off and did patrol the skies over Poland's capital. NATO's spokesperson also said that it wasn't just Poland that responded to this, that other NATO countries and their systems responded. For example, the Netherlands Air Force also responded with fighter jets. An Italian early warning aircraft was launched along with a NATO tanker there. German Patriot missile batteries in Poland were also placed on alert. And we do also have, finally, commentary coming from Russia. This is coming from Russia's defense ministry, Vlad, commenting and saying that no objects on Polish territory were planned to be targeted. My stress, they're planned to be targeted. And they say that it is ready to hold consultations with Polish defense officials.
All right. So, I mean, you pointed out, Ramy, the significance of the creation of NATO in 1949. Also, as a student of history, let's not forget that World War II started when German forces occupied Poland on September 1st. Actually, you know, we just passed September 1st. September 1, 1939, that triggered World War II. So now you've got NATO invoking its Article 4, which isn't as significant as invoking Article 5, but does have an important distinction. Explain it to us.
Yeah, well, you know, the questions that NATO and its leaders will be considering is, was this an accident or was this deliberate? And that will guide those discussions that will happen under NATO's Article 4. The other question that's being thrown out there, was this an attempt by Putin maybe to test what NATO might do if it were attacked? That is what Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has already been saying, along with defense analysts that are weighing in. But to your question, NATO, yes, has activated Article 4. Well, what does that mean? This means that the bloc, the 32 members that make up NATO, will now start to consult on what has happened. This is basically Warsaw, and this is Warsaw raising its hand, basically saying everyone needs to come together to consult. And yes, that is different from Article 5. A reminder, Article 5, if NATO does invoke that, basically they're saying this is an attack against one member, and this is an attack against all members. That is that is what the directive is there. That is NATO saying it's been threatened and that it's facing a crisis. And also looking at the lens of history, Vlad, you talked about the start of World War II. The last time that Article 5 was invoked was 24 years ago, almost to the day. That was September 12th, 2001. The bloc, as it sees it right now, not at the stage of crisis, but that is, again, what those consultations are there for, to determine really what happened and what to do next.
Yeah, and let's also not forget, I mean, we're talking about the airspace in and around Eastern Europe. Let's not forget that it is alleged that Russia shot down Malaysia Air Flight 17, Ramy, which I know you covered a few years ago. That's a civilian aircraft, so that airspace is incredibly dangerous, remains incredibly dangerous when you have Vladimir Putin directing that Air Force and those missile bases. Ramy Inocencio reporting for us from London this morning. Thank you, Ramy. Appreciate it.
Of course.
All right, for more on this, let's go to CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi, who's joining me now to talk more about this. Olivia, what is the White House saying in reaction to this escalation?
Vlad, it's good to be with you. We are just now hearing from the White House, from a White House official who tells us that they are tracking the reports out of Poland and that President Trump is expected to speak with the president of Poland later today, President Nawrocki. We do not know when that call will happen, where we are expecting it to happen. I should also note that Mr. Nawrocki was here in Washington last week, just reaffirming the U.S. security ties to the EU, to NATO, and to Poland. So this is quite notable. There's also 10,000 U.S. troops that are in Poland. So a lot of questions today about whether or not there was any response from the U.S. troops on the ground as a result of this. Of course, they have been there since 2014 when Russia first invaded Crimea. They have stayed there through the 2022 invasion and through this ongoing war. We also heard from the NATO ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker. He said, we have not heard yet, or he said, we stand by our NATO allies in the face of these airspace violations, and we will defend every inch of NATO territory. But of course, we are waiting to hear from President Trump specifically on this, given that he just met with Vladimir Putin about a month ago and then held a summit essentially at the White House with European leaders, that coalition of the willing to protect Ukraine, about what's the next step forward to ending this war. And by all accounts, it seems that President Putin is ratcheting up attacks in Ukraine, and this is certainly could be seen as an escalation and could be taken. This situation could really escalate quickly, Vlad.
No, you make an excellent point, Olivia. As you point out, the president rolled out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin and indicated to the world and to the media that his intention was to try and bring about a negotiated peace between the two, to get Zelensky and Putin together, perhaps, to talk about peace. But all that's happened since that meeting, which legitimized Vladimir Putin in the eyes of the world, is that he's ratcheted up the attacks on Ukraine, and now we have this attack in Poland that the president is going to have to talk to reporters about as to what he sees the path forward. Olivia Rinaldi reporting from Washington for us. Olivia, as always, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now let's bring in CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd. Sam, thank you for joining us on 24/7 today. Just how major of an escalation is this?
Well, this is a historic moment. NATO was founded in 1949, and this is the first time since NATO was founded that it had to deploy NATO assets to neutralize enemy devices in NATO airspace. I mean, that's just a major moment for the alliance and for the world. In terms of how escalatory is this, I don't currently assess that NATO or Russia want to escalate the situation further. We've seen NATO invoke Poland invoke Article 4 of the NATO treaty, which is consultations, versus, for example, going straight to Article 5, which would trigger some sort of collective defense arrangement. So right now, we should expect Poland to continue its investigation and perhaps NATO to take a series of small steps to try to deter Russia from doing this again.
And Sam, you just mentioned Article 4 there. Can you walk us through exactly what that means?
Sure. The NATO treaty, which again was signed in 1949, includes provisions for its now 32 member states to engage in a consultative process when the territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any of the member states is threatened. And that's clearly the case here. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, likely intentionally, Russian drones penetrated a NATO member's airspace. And so currently, NATO permanent representatives are meeting to discuss what happened, to consult, and to decide on next steps. So rather than going straight to some sort of collective military response, there are consultations amongst the 32 member states.
Yeah, and you mentioned Article 5 earlier as well. What does that entail? And is there a possibility for that to actually be activated in this case?
Article 5, in layman's terms, means that if one country is attacked, the other member states have to come to that country's defense. Article 5 was invoked once on 9/11. It could be invoked again, but I do think that that could trigger a much larger series of events on Europe and potentially involving the United States and Canada, which are NATO member states as well. And that is likely something that both Russia and NATO member states will try to avoid. So ostensibly, countries are looking for both an off-ramp as well as a convincing way to deter Russia from engaging in this harassing activity anytime again.
All right, Sam Vinograd, thank you so much for your insight today.
Thanks.
We appreciate your time. And for how the White House is responding to all of this, let's go live to CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Ed, what are you hearing from the Trump administration about all of this?
Muga, the White House said the president's been read into all of this, but notably just about 2 hours ago, he chimed in on Truth Social himself saying, "What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go." What does that mean? What does that entail? What does that mean for a U.S. response? Of course, we don't know. The president likes to dangle these kind of vague and dramatic pronouncements on his social media accounts, so we'll wait and see if the White House, the Pentagon, the State Department have anything more to say. But as you saw there from the NATO Secretary General, they're still trying to assess exactly what was going on. He had a intelligence briefing scheduled for 11:30 Eastern, and we don't normally get a readout of those, of course, and that's a pretty standard meeting he has, so he very well could have learned more during that meeting. But for now, obviously, they're monitoring it and in consultation with NATO allies.
Yeah, Ed, as you said, there are question mark about what here we go. What does that actually mean? But we know President Trump has continued to threaten sanctions against Russia. He's done that over and over again, but hasn't actually pulled the plug on that. So is it likely we're going to see that this time around? And what's on the line for them?
I think we're seeing chatter about it already, and there's already another push underway up on Capitol Hill to pass a sanctions package that would sort of redefine when a president can put in place sanctions on Russia and sort of pull back certain elements of them or put them back in place. That proposal's been on the books now for several months and has more than 80 bipartisan co-sponsors. Among them is the Republican senator for North Carolina, Tom Tillis, who says they really should get to work on this, but they're waiting for cues from the White House. Take a listen.
That we should at least let Russia know that our patience is wearing thin. I mean, this guy got a red carpet reception on U.S. soil a month ago. And then he gets a red carpet reception and sits and observes a display of totalitarian world's power. At some point, I think we have to punch back, and I think that point's now.
The Senate is an independent body, though. You could just put the sanctions bill on the floor. Why wait for the White House?
Well, you got to wait for the leadership for that. I'd vote for it in a heartbeat.
So you see there Tillis saying it's Vladimir Putin who deserves to be held accountable for showing up in Alaska for meetings about the war in Ukraine with the president, then going and hanging out with Chinese President Xi Jinping and other leaders at China's commemorations last week of the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. All of this, though, as you see Tillis say there, depends on whether or not the White House wants Republican leadership in the Senate to move forward with it. Normally, you'd think Congress would work on its own, but they've been waiting for cues on all of this from the White House because, of course, you measure that potential work and the statement it would send against whatever diplomacy or other action the White House is contemplating.
All right, we shall wait and see what happens. Ed O'Keefe, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time as always.
Take care.
Let's go live now to the Pentagon with CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata. Charlie, thank you for joining us today. What would a NATO investigation into this look like?
Yeah, well, it's a good question because it's a broad question because it depends on the NATO partners that are in that area. Now, one great advantage is that the United States is heavily invested in Poland. There are sort of matching partners. So the United States and the Poles are there, and there's something like 10,000 troops there. And the reason I mention that is because they're going to have next level surveillance and security anywhere where there's going to be U.S. troops in any kind of harm's way. So they will rely on imagery, satellite imagery if they get it. They're going to look at launches, where they came from, because there are some reports that these drones originated from Belarus, which would also be a first. And of course, they're going to be able to track them. You know, you've had F-35s from the Netherlands who are tracking these drones. So they're going to have a very good picture of how many drones entered NATO airspace, not just Polish airspace, NATO airspace, how far they got, how many were shot down, and where they originated from. All of that will go into that picture, but I guarantee the United States is going to take the lead on it.
The Polish Prime Minister is calling for Article 4. Olivia mentioned this briefly when we spoke with her. Can you walk us through exactly what that means?
Yeah, it's this very specific category because we all know Article 5, but Article 4 is one step down from that. And I was just writing it down as it came on air. It's whether to determine whether the territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any of its parties is threatened. The territorial integrity. So they'll have to look into exactly that. And I think Poland, the Polish Prime Minister, was the one who triggered this through NATO partners. I think he's got a pretty good case because he's got drones, physical drones, some that were shot down. He's got the evidence. And again, putting together those satellite pieces and the tracking that they would have got from some of those NATO aircraft. And there are NATO surveillance aircraft all up there all the time. So they're going to have a pretty good picture, and that might come into question. And that is one step down from Article 5.
Charlie D'Agata, thank you so much for walking us through that. We appreciate your time today.